Hey, welcome to our Ridge Church podcast. My name is Jonathan. I'm the lead pastor here. And our goal at Ridge Church is to follow Jesus in every area of our lives. And one of the conversations that we want to have as we start this podcast is a conversation around mental health. And mental health is such an important part of our lives. It's sort of our emotional and psychological well-being, our relational well-being, and how we it affects just how we interact around so much of the life around us, how we handle our stress and all those things. And so beginning today and over the next 3 podcasts, we've invited 3 different experts in this area to come and to talk to us. They're all people who love Jesus deeply and who are following him, but know a great deal around it. And so today I have the privilege of welcoming Dr. Dave Currie to join us today. Dr. Dave, you are the founder and the director of Doing Family Right Care Center, and you've been counseling people in the area of relationships for 40 plus years. Is that right?
Yeah, 44 technically.
44 years. This is amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and you've had a huge impact. I know even in our own lives, about 2 years ago, you came and did a marriage conference here at the church.
Yeah.
And to this day, my wife still will say to me, if I'm getting off track, she's like, Dr. Dave said, I'm like, oh man. So it's been so good for our marriage. It's just so helpful. And I know many people just really enjoyed that opportunity.
Well, it's a privilege to be here, Jonathan, and just love helping the church kind of get the God stuff worked in relationships. Like, sometimes God stuff is so heavenly, it's way out there and it's so deeply personal, but how do I make it work in a house? How do I make it work in a marriage? The practical side of living out your faith is often not talked about as clearly as I'd like to say.
That's right. Sometimes when I'm preaching, it's a 30-minute sermon and it's sort of these high-level concepts, but there's this place where we just need to bring it right down into like the daily life that we're living in. And so that's this conversation. Let's talk about relationships, especially in the middle of COVID, right?
Yeah.
COVID, and maybe you could tell me, but it seems to me, at least in my world, that there's been added pressures because we're kind of locked together. We can't kind of get away from things like we typically used to.
Sure.
So that's my question. You've been doing this for many years. Have you seen a change or an increase in the kind of relational challenges that people are facing, or is it sort of same like it's always been?
Yeah. So first of all, COVID is having a big impact on people's lives, their marriages and families. Across Canada right now, 4 to 10 people are saying COVID is affecting my emotional well-being. In my counseling practice, people are actually listing COVID issues now, not just marital parenting issues and stuff. They're coming in, actually using the word COVID. Yeah. Right? And so it actually is having a real impact on people, especially as it goes on into the 11th month now. I mean, we're almost into the 11th, moving into the 12th months. And so it's systemic. It is affecting people all over. It's affecting things like suicide rates. It's affecting things like domestic abuse is up, right? And violence is up. And so we got lots to talk through here and how to handle this in a way that honors God.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the key, right? Is how do we deal with it in the middle of that? So, you say they come in listing COVID issues. So that's some of those things that you're talking about there. The question, my question is this, if a couple is stuck together or a family, sometimes it's parents and children or siblings, like is COVID the right time to poke at that stuff? Like if there's pressures there, because we're kind of stuck together, right? Like, is this the right time to be like, hey, we need to talk about this stuff?
Well, you've got to survive. Because we don't know. COVID could be, hey, in a month, everything's good. We're all back to normal. We could be another year.
Right.
And so if you don't begin to address the things that are surfacing, here's what's happening, Jonathan. The more we spend time together and we have unresolved issues, the more we bump and collide, and it reveals the cracks in our marital armor. Reveals them more and more. We got, what was a stress 4, but we would get away and have a break, and we can, have a nice date away and a nice evening, and okay, we're going to survive. That 4 is back to a 2.5, and then it sneaks up to a 3.5 again. And we know there's a systemic problem with our communication or conflict resolution or whatever. But with COVID and no relief, not only with a gap from each other,
Right.
You know, it's like if you and I were in solitary confinement, first of all, it wouldn't be solitary,
Right.
but if you and I were locked in a 16 by 16 room, we better find out a way to get along. Because you and I could invariably, with attitudes, could end up strangling each other,
right.
Fighting out, and so the guards come to the door and they find out one of us dead.
Then it is solitary confinement.
That is right. That is back to solitary. But what happens is, in the home, you got things like cabin fever, people not getting out as much to just get fresh air. We have people don't have a change of scenery and variety. So it's the same walls, it's the same people, it's the same chairs, it's the sameness. There's no change. And yes, they can get out and walk, but people are not really good at just doing those kind of things. We can't go to many of the entertainment places; they're closed down. You know, we can kind of go on a date if it's a restaurant, but that's kind of it. So you're kind of doing walks and restaurants, or I don't like walks.
Right.
Then what do you do? Well, you do restaurants. Well, whatever. So we have to come to the point that these things have to be discussed. And we can talk about what those things are we need to discuss, but if you don't talk through the stress points when they're magnified, then you're really, really putting your head in the sand.
Yeah. So the question is, when do you start talking about, like, do you just launch into that? Is it like, hey, supper was great, honey, by the way, I got to talk to you about this. Is that the best place to do that? Is there a better time to do that? Like, how do you,
so we're really talking in the area of wise conflict resolution. Okay. And so some of the best parameters around having a discussion you need to have is starting like this. Honey, I think we need to have a discussion. When would work best for you? Because usually, listen, we need to talk about this. And so I've thought about it. I'm ramped up, ready to talk. And she's going, and she's not ready.
Right.
She hasn't thought about it. She feels blindsided, especially if there's been frustrations between them, i.e. conflicts. Right. They're not going to be at their best. So it's really important that we respect each other's processing styles. Some are immediate processors. That's more me. Let's talk right now. Let's solve it now. If you really love me in this marriage, we'll talk about this tonight and get this figured out right now. Yeah. My wife is what's called an intentional or deliberate processor. She needs to, kind of like an engineer. She wanted to think about it back and forth. So we have our best conversations 2 days from this moment.
Okay.
So I would say, hey, listen, when would it be good for you to talk about it? She says, well, what all do you want to talk about? I said, well, we need to talk about how we're going to, get through some of our conflict better in this isolation time. Because you know how it's getting crusty sometimes. Yeah, it is really getting crusty between us. Well, we need to talk about, first of all, we're not in a crisis.
Right.
Because you're not going to solve anything well when you're already ticked at each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
So not in the middle of a crisis. Secondly, with enough notice that the person who's more deliberate can have a time to mull over it and think about it. So, my wife and I have agreed that if we're going to have a conversation that's going to be profitable for both of us, even though I'm more immediate and she's more needs to process it, we usually do it a couple days down the road. Yeah. And so we know, like, hey, after dinner on Thursday, we're going to just sit down and talk about this and kind of get a game plan of how we're going to, work through things. And there's one thing that really helps, Jonathan, is that we have an overriding core marital philosophy. That's a big way of saying it's this. There's no issue that's bigger than this marriage.
Right. Yeah.
See how that anchors me?
Right.
You see?
Yeah, the goal is we're going to see this through, right? We're in this thing together, so let's figure out a solution to it.
Yeah. So just an example for our listeners that might be helpful. About 7 years ago, we moved houses. We were 22 years in one house.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so we raised our kids there. We moved from Saskatchewan, pastor at Northview, and, then family life director, then DFR. But we were 22 and a half years in the same house. So, you're pretty set, lots of stuff you've gathered. And now we're moving to a new place, right? We needed to have different size of rooms just because all the grandkids, 13 grandkids, everybody together. We can't have all these little rooms. We need to have more of the great room feeling. Yep. Okay, so we're making this move. Well, God opened the door, great sale for our house, good deal on the other house. We just really felt blessed. Well, when people are moving, there's lots of stress.
Yeah,
are we keeping this or not?
Yeah.
And, blah, blah, blah. And, we can just get going, nattering at each other, nagging, bagging, fighting, etc. We made a decision. This is the overarching thing I'm thinking couples need to have even now in COVID. But we made the decision in this 6-week period when we are transitioning from one house to the next, It is against our marital law to fight.
Wow.
We actually made a choice. It's against
impressive.
our law to fight. Because look at the big picture. We are so blessed. We are so blessed. God has given us a good price for this house we were in 22 years. We won't have to do the renos now. Thank you, Jesus. And we're going to the new place. Got a great deal on that. And it's so amazing, more than we were looking for. So the context is we are blessed, Jonathan. Yeah. We don't have a right to be fighting. So whether or not we're not keeping that, or why would you keep that? Why don't you just sell that? You know, we're in the move. Yeah. And wow, I like that. Well, you collect too much stuff, and here we go.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Right. And so we made this decision, and we catch, oh yeah, no fighting, because we're so blessed. So what happens is the couple needs to make a decision. There's no issue bigger than this marriage. Yeah. I love you, honey. I know you love me. We got to figure out a way to talk this through in a more responsible way. Yeah, stress goes up, pressures go up, but we still have to have this overarching theme. There's no problem that's bigger than this marriage. Let's figure it out. Let's figure it out together. Now, we do it different, so that's why we sometimes need 2 days just to get to the better place. But there's some ideas. Yeah.
Okay, so what if say, I think there's a problem and the other person doesn't? Like, I'm like, oh, we need to talk, and they're saying, no, we're all good.
They're good with it.
Yeah, like this is where, so for instance, like one of the things is like for instance, different roles. I'm home all day with the kids and I'm trying to work from home. And then my spouse has been out, they've been working, they come home, they're tired. And I'm sort of left with this like, no, you need to carry this load. They're like, no, I'm tired. Like, how do you just keep going at it until you.
So let's talk general back into that specific of come home, whose responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, really key for couples to hear, if it's a problem to one of you, it's a problem to both of you.
Yeah, it's true.
I cannot dismiss, well, that's just you.
Right.
That's what you think, but it's not a problem to me. No. We are one.
Right.
And so if I am holding my wife's hand figuratively,
yeah,
and I can't let go, and she's hanging out over a ledge.
Right. That's a problem for you.
It's a problem for me too. Yeah. So if I don't pull with her and we don't work together, we're both gone.
Yeah.
And so if it's a problem to one of you, it's a problem to both of you. So I can't minimize, I can't, get defensive on my perspective and minimize my wife's. I can't minimize what she thinks is important, because what she thinks is important is her heart. And because we're holding hands and we're part of this conglomeration called us, then both of us have a voice and both of us need to be heard. And I can't minimize what she thinks is important. So there's the big picture. Now on this coming home thing, you can play pink and blue games.
Right.
Sure. What other responsibilities from 5 o'clock till 8 o'clock when the kids are in bed? Okay. She's had the kids all day. She might, the kids might be home homeschooling. I mean, who knows what's going on? Yeah. She may be having to do 3 hours with a part-time job someplace. And he's been out, pushing since, 6:30 this morning. Right. So, there's lots of pressures on both of them. But she's worked hard in her capacity, in her role, as he's worked hard all day in his role. And now we have this shared 5:30 till 8:30 slot. So you discuss what are the 20 things that need to be done and how can we best partner on this so that we both feel closer to sane come 8:15.
Right. Yeah.
And we have to work together on that.
No, that just makes good sense, that whole conversation.
Yeah.
What about, what about finding space for yourself? So, my wife and I, we're very, very, very different. I said to her the other day, I'm okay with not having so much stuff going. And she's such a social person. And she's like, I need social interaction. I'm like, I need not social interaction.
Yeah.
I mean, I love people, but I just need that space. Like, how about those different personalities,
totally.
Especially when there's not an outlet, say there is some outlets, but there's not as many outlets for that. How do you?
And we're tired of digital outlets only.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
yeah,
don't
we need
Zoom me.
people.
Don't kill me by Zooming me again. Okay,
exactly.
But here's the deal. Some people recharge by isolating, withdrawing, and they recharge. That sounds like you,
right? And
that sounds like my wife. I'm more like your wife, where I'm more energized by being out and about.
Yeah.
Right? And so now we have a problem because on the drive home, I've been with people all day. So I say, honey, just so you know, I'm out of words.
Yeah.
Well, she hasn't talked all day. So even though she likes to be alone, she's read and she's done different things and done grandkid visits and stuff. But she does want to talk, even though she's more socially less inclined. But I'm out of words.
Yeah.
So we have to talk through how we're going to do it. And it's all about being other-centered. What does my spouse need? If I am married, I am sacrificing to love well. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing you got to keep in mind. Marriage is not saying, well, this is not what I signed up for. You know what you signed up for? You signed up to sacrifice and be what your spouse needs, not just get your needs met. And so in this fray of isolation, needing break, listen, we got to respect, right? Like, my wife likes to just get away, put her feet up by the fire and read. And that's recharging for her. I want to, hey, let's talk and, okay, that's maybe recharging for me. Although I'm with a lot of people all day. So sometimes I need to just dial it down too. You have to discuss what you need, what recharging looks like, what helps me, and where we can play into each other's world, right?
Right.
So when I tell my wife that, listen, I've had a very full day, I've run out of words, because we always talk on my drive home. It's 12 minutes, okay?
Yeah.
And when I actually said the car, she said, well, listen, why don't you we can talk when you get home. Why don't you just listen to sports on the way home? She knows me.
Yeah.
I de-escalate, depressurize, recharge by just listening to the latest on the Canucks or, the football things happening in the Super Bowl soon. It's just, for me, it's just easy, no pressure, and that's good for me. So we have to share what we're needing. I actually just worked with a couple yesterday. He rejuvenates and works through issues alone. Mm-hmm. She's let's talk this through. We got to talk this through. Don't you care about us? And he's saying, I do care about us, but I got to work this through my way. Well, maybe you should talk to each other about what my way is.
Right.
You see, because it looks like you're rejecting her to her.
Right.
And she's now hurt. And he said, well, she shouldn't be hurt. Well, but you walked away. Yeah. So she's hurt because you walked away. That feels like rejection. Well, I just got to go process it. Did you tell her you're going to go process it? Well, no, I just, and he's stumbling.
Yeah, of course.
I says, well, for her, you rejected her. So you need to discuss what you need to recharge. How's the best to do it? What's our interaction going to look like? What's for expectations? The social person wants to, debrief and talk more. And if you've been all day talking, even if you are the more social person, you likely want less talk in the evening. Right. And if your wife's been home alone or whatever, she wants to have some interaction time. So things like, okay, during this 20, 30 minutes dinner hour, no phones, no digital, just leave it off, have a little less time. All right. But you got to talk about how you recharge.
Yeah, for sure. So it seems to me there's that tension. The love is the sacrifice, but you've also you've got needs, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes Christians think it's all love or it's all the need, but there's that tension between those two.
Yeah.
Around how those things go.
Yeah. I think sometimes in our desire to be hyper-Christian, and I don't say that with any disrespect, but I'll just sacrifice. I'll just accommodate. Yeah. I'll just give in to, that's better for her. So there's this sense of, it's self-sacrifice. Right. It's, but the problem is if inside you're kind of seething because they're not doing that to you.
Right.
Here I am giving, and you're doing it like it's noble, but inside you're kind of choked. You're choked. Yeah. And you're going to the room, you're giving them time because that's what they need, or you're talking like they need, you're meeting their needs, you're loving well, you're being the servant like Jesus wants you to. Then you go back to the other room and you're kind of and then, hi honey, sure. Take another hour. I'll watch the 11 kids. No problem. Right. And we this ultra accommodating and denial of self. You see, marriage is not the canceling of one person. Right. It's the merging of two.
Right.
And two people have needs. At some point, if we're eating at a table and I say, no, it's okay. You go ahead and eat the food. I won't need any. Go ahead, you eat the food. If I keep doing that and I don't say, well, let's share it.
Right.
Because I'm hungry too. If I never say I'm hungry too, my wife would be married to a dead person.
Right. Yeah.
And and of course, understand that if needs aren't being met in a healthy way at home, they'll often look to be met elsewhere.
Right.
And there is the big problem.
Right.
Marriages are struggling because of COVID. We're not being proactive in how do we do this. We're not having good us time. Us time is couple time.
Yeah.
You know, because it's harder. You got to work a little harder to make it happen. Oh, you can't do anything. Okay, you can't do anything if you're going to be lazy in your mind. But if you decide
right.
we're gonna go out, you know. So my wife and I actually driving here today, I said, let's have a date tonight. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
So we talked on the drive here of 3 things we're going to do. One's
Nice.
a little project.
Yeah.
One's some kind of Netflix thing where series we're watching. We'll watch one more of those. And we're going to make dinner together where I'm going to actually likely barbecue something. Okay, but you see, we talked about what we're going to do to have some us time. And I'm 46 years married. But people ask us why we have a good marriage still.
Right.
Because we're intentional. Yeah. And in COVID, you got to be hyper intentional or it ain't going to last.
Yeah, for sure. There's a heightened need for that intentionality, isn't there? Yeah. Okay, let me ask you a different question again around some of the pressures of COVID. And that's this, you know, in families, maybe in marriages, sometimes among siblings, sometimes between parents and children, there's just this different opinions around COVID. How much masking, how much separation? Can we get together with mom and dad if we get together and the other sibling doesn't? If, you know, or sometimes people have been, you know, watching stuff on YouTube and they're like, oh, you shouldn't get vaccinated. Oh, we need to get vaccinated. You know, like there's just, it's out in the culture there, but it's also within families and maybe even within marriages. How should a person deal with that if they're like, hold strong opinions one way and their spouse or their family holds it? How do we walk through that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, like we might only be 5 feet 8 inches apart right now.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I mean,
that's right.
and I mean, I think we likely are 6, but the point is we have to have a comfort zone. Right. Okay. And of course, people come to my office for counseling and we follow all the protocol of COVID, you know, with the cleaning in between, and they come in with their masks. But usually when we sit down, much like this, they take their masks off and we have our session. And then as they leave, they put their masks on as they leave and run into other people and things like that. Okay, that's fine. Right. But in this COVID thing, first of all, you got to be careful of the COVID Nazi. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Tell us more.
So, well, the COVID Nazi is listening to everything and they are wired up the yin yang with the latest COVID. Did you know that today? And you can't that. And Dr. Bonnie said that. And they're just wired with the latest and the panic thing. Okay. Those people, basically give them space. Okay. But I tell people, listen, you might, especially if you're struggling with anxiety and worrying about this stuff, maybe just 15 minutes a day of the news. I don't even watch any COVID news. I don't even listen to anything. You might say, well, that's narrow, Currie. No. I hear lots enough from other people to get the latest. I let all the people give me the summaries. Right. They've listened to the half hour and they tell me the 2 things that are the latest. Yeah. That's good enough for me, right? Yeah. But there's people that are watching an hour a day and the latest in the US and what happened in Italy. And we're bringing all these pressures on us and we're becoming crispy critters inside, tense and tight and obnoxious to be around. So for some people, you got to wean yourself off your COVID elixir every day. Right. Your hit of COVID. Okay, so that's one. Right. Yeah. Okay. So the other thing is I need to operate in releasing to you what you need to do. Yeah. So I see people from all walks of life, you know, in my practice. And we follow all the COVID. One of my board members is actually on the Provincial Health Board Committee with Dr. Henry. So he's guided me on how to do it right. And so I'm all operating cool. But each couple coming in, I start assuming that they are really, really strict. Right. I assume that likely where they are. And, you know, well, where are you at that? Oh, we don't worry about it much. And do we have to keep our masks on? No, it's whatever you're comfortable with. And we're sitting, 6 feet apart. And, we're just counseling. It's not like we're having this big yelling match or something where we might be spitting or something. Right. But so what happens is we start out of respect. Okay. We start out of respect. And then as we find each other's safety zones, then we kind of relax. Right. And remember, though the government has a lot of specifics of what we should or shouldn't do, it's the spirit of cooperation, respect, understanding the basics, right? Like, I mean, we do childcare for some of our grandkids, so we're in those bubbles. But for Christmas, we didn't have everybody together at the house because that would be contravening what they asked. But we were able to go to the one house with the 4, because we babysit anyway, so we're part of their circle.
Sure.
So we actually did the Christmas tour.
Right.
No one came to our house and we didn't have a big Christmas dinner because that would contravene what they're asking us to respect. But wisdom says, since we're doing childcare anyway, we did Christmas at one home and Christmas at another home on a different day. And, and so the spirit of us we have to work with. So when you have real strictness with, I said, the COVID Nazi, that person needs to chill a little bit and not make all their requirements everybody's.
And how about the other sort of extreme of that? This is overblown. It's too much. Same thing there. Dial back on the YouTube. Dial back on the.
Well, right down to it's a conspiracy and all that kind of stuff. I don't waste a second on those discussions. I think we have to be respectful in our culture. That's what we have to be, respectful in our culture. And, you may feel, I likely would lean more towards a greater freedom and confidence that we're going to be fine through this. Sure. But I operate with huge respect of other people, right?
Yeah. So within a family, there's that respect. If one sibling's like, oh, we need to, do the extreme, and the other sibling is saying, oh no, this is overblown. It's just deep respect for one another.
Respect, and then let's discuss, right? Because situations I'm aware of where the wife is really anxiety ridden. It was before COVID, she was anxiety ridden.
Right.
Now with COVID, you've given her something really big to worry about. Right. So she is, anal in the sense of everything has to be done like this, and we shouldn't. You can't touch my glass, and and it goes. And the husband's saying, but we sleep together every night. Why are you worrying about this and that? And well, we can't have the grandkids over because they have other friends. Well, okay, is there a risk of transfer? Maybe. But what's happening is we have cut off all social connection, and people are now spiraling in their mental health because of lack of contact.
Right.
See, lack of contact is actually hurting more people than the COVID, I would say. Because with the suicide rate going up, with the accidental death to drug overdose going up, with the domestic violence going up, with all kinds of conflict resolution explosions happening at a greater percentage, COVID is having its effect on people, and the government is so worried about the infection, and they're losing perspective on what it's doing to so many people.
Right. Yeah. So we're finding that's why we're having this conversation here, is to help people sort of walk through that thing. Right. And so here's a question then. At what point is it that a situation is bad enough that someone should pursue professional counseling? Like, where is it like, hey, we've gone from, planning the discussion, working, like, how bad should it be? Or what point is it like, okay, now we need to get somebody like yourself or another Christian counselor involved in this?
Yeah. So first of all, the ones I likely hurt most for are those that are living with anxiety and depression, and they feel alone and cut off, and they're spiraling down. Those are the people I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
And so those people would be wise to reach out to a friend, to go for a walk, not to be alone, not to let your spiraling thoughts take you down the toilet even more.
Yeah.
They need contact. They need support. They need words of encouragement. They got to get out of isolation and go for your walk with your friend at 6 feet apart if needed, as opposed to 4. But keep your mental focus on, okay, got to respect the rules. But you need people. You need people. And if it's a therapist, then a therapist. In a marriage, if you're into your 7th week, 8th week, 9th week of it is really bad, like at least once a week, we are so choked that we're not even sleeping in the same room at night. Yeah. And you look back at our marriage and it's never been like this. And it's just getting worse. From 6 weeks ago, to now 4 weeks ago, to 2 weeks ago, it is getting worse, and we can both feel it. Need to reach out and get some help of how to best work this through.
Is there still sort of a stigma around that in the Christian world? Like, when I was a kid, if someone went to counseling, it was kind of like, oh, is there still that sense? Should people be...
I would think that there's the stigma is actually higher within the church than in the regular society. Let me tell you, Christian people listening, we'll talk about your marriage. If it's going through struggles in your marriage right now, let me ask the question. Do you ever take your car in for scheduled maintenance?
Yeah.
Well, yes, we do. Matter of fact, if there's a dumb rattle or there's something, that's dying as we're driving home, we got an issue we got to work through. Well, we don't say, well, I'm not going into a mechanic.
Right.
There's no way I'm going to a mechanic. Well, yeah, your car is on 17th Street. It's 14 blocks from your house. Maybe you should tow it to the mechanic and get him to fix it. Right? Or schedule maintenance. Matter of fact, driving here, I notice as I flip through my dials on my Infinity, I look, scheduled maintenance in 1,400 kilometers. It even tells me I need an oil change. I need, filters done, right? Scheduled maintenance. Well, we understand that. Why can we not have scheduled maintenance on a marriage, i.e. go to marriage conference, retreat, whatever, or if there's troubleshooting needed in the engine and the engine light keeps coming on or the battery keeps wearing out, there's a problem, take it to someone who can help with that. And if you've already been trying for 2 years to work this out, i.e. fix the marital battery yourself and it hasn't been getting better, it's dying every night, maybe you should go to somebody who legitimately can help you get to a better place on that. So whether it's a tune-up or scheduled maintenance, it's the same for a marriage and relationships in the family.
Costs money.
Costs money. It does. And so, matter of fact, let's say it's real extreme, okay? I want you to know, going to a lawyer is way more expensive than going to a counselor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So that's one of them. Thing. And, sometimes, it's so expensive, coming to counseling, because I'm not cheap, but I'll tell you what, they pulled up in an Audi.
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so I'm a little confused. One guy actually said to me, this is now 3 years ago, but I laughed. He was really in a mess. He had cheated on his wife, and his pastor, the church, sent him to me, said they'd pay for half. And he was struggling about, still the other half, whatever it was, $80 was the other half at the time or something. And he says, this is pretty expensive. It's like you want me to sell my golf clubs. And I want you to know something. I almost said, I think you should sell your golf clubs because you cheated on your wife and it had to do with your whole golf world. So, yeah. And, and the guy pulled up in a rather nice car and he's kidding about selling the golf clubs. If he's got the car, that's nice. And he's got the job, that's pretty big. I'm first of all thinking, why is the church paying for half of this guy's?
Right.
But he's struggling with even paying the other half and kind of grumpy about it. I'm thinking, golly, buddy, what world do you live in? But here's the deal. You pay, $100+ for your phone every month. You have other things that you spend at, well, that's just what it is. Because it's not a normal bill that you'll do. But what happens is, listen, I could run a stream of people by who've come to see me 8-10 weeks, and their whole marriage is turned around, and it might have cost them $1,500, say. But the joy they have.
Yeah.
They're laughing, and they're doing so good. Thank you, Dr. Whit Dave. It was worth Why? Yeah. Because they're to the place they wanted to be that they couldn't get on their own. Funniest thing that happens in my office, the first day we do an assessment, right? What's going on? What are the problems, right? And I said, okay, so now you've talked open with me about the 8 to 10 things that we got to talk about, okay? Yeah. And I says, now remember, in the last 2 years, you haven't solved any of these, have you? Well, no. I said, okay, so in the next week or two till I see you again, you have to promise me something. You cannot try to solve these now.
Right.
Just because you bring them up doesn't mean you're ready to solve them.
Sure.
Because they've been all the way through and you haven't solved them yet. So right now you have one assignment. This changes people. One assignment between now and the 10 days when I see you next. Here's the one assignment. Be kind. Yeah. Just be kind. Do your best to be kind to your spouse. Forget all the problems and just be kind. Measure your day by how kind you were to your spouse. I've had people come back. We haven't even started working their problems. She says, you know what, Dave? I said, what? Something started to change. Yeah. I said, well, tell me. Well, I don't know. You said we just had to be kind. And I could see my wife being kind. And this guy's starting to cry because he hasn't had kindness from his wife in a long time. And he's been isolating because she's the more outspoken one and he's the more private one. And she's going, yeah. She says, I can't believe how just that has changed things. I said, well, wait till we start fixing the problems. You guys are going to have a honeymoon soon, right? But you see, this very simple things of just started to get a paradigm shift on how we need to move forward to improve our relationships.
So beautiful. What if one spouse wants to do counseling and the other's like, no, I'm not going? Is it still worth one coming, or what? How do you manage that?
Well, you're going to hear it, and so I might as well tell you. But I'm kind of letting my little trade secret out. But it's okay. If Sally comes for counseling and Bill doesn't want to, I say, Sally, come. I just want to hear your perspective. Maybe I can give you some coaching on how to best improve things, even though Bill's not here. It's really important for me to hear from both sides. I've learned over the years of doing marriage counseling that there's 3 perspectives: his, hers, and mine. And mine's likely still the most objective, right? But there's 3 perspectives. If I only hear hers, she could paint him as this biggest gorilla, this monster, this brute, and he comes in and he's 5'7". Right. And I pictured him as 6'4" and this 300-pound gorilla, because she's postured it this way. So what I like to try to do, and this is the secret I'm letting out, is I meet with Sally and I say, look, good to talk to you, Sally. Can you let me try something? Even if Bill doesn't want to come in for counseling, I'd like him to come in once to share his perspective so I can help you better.
Okay.
So what I do, and I say, if Sally's a woman of faith, usually is, I say, Sally, and by the way, pray that Bill feels accepted by me and finds the counseling experience good enough, even though I'm not counseling. But I say that's the way I would either call or text Bill and say, hey, Bill, I'm Dave Currie. I just saw Sally. And I know right now you're not really into counseling. I'm good with that. But I'm going to be counseling your wife for a while. And it would really help me if I had your take on things, because I need to hear both sides of the story to really make it helpful. So would you, even if it's on the phone, would you give me a half hour or maybe come in for an hour and I want to hear your side, even if I'm just going to work with Sally. Sally's praying that he feels okay with Currie wasn't that bad. He's really fair and everything. Yeah. And then they come in together. So that's kind of how I do that. And so if Bill doesn't want to come, and even now after hearing this, well, for sure I'm not coming because he's just talking me into coming. No, I'm not. I'm helping Bill realize that it's not scary to go talk to somebody who wants to help. Half of my 40-some years of ministry has been a pastor. I care for people. I can't turn off Pastor Dave. Bill, I want to help you. Yeah, I'm a therapist too, and I can help you get to a better place in your marriage. But Bill, I love you, and I want to help you. So tell me your story, and when you want to come in and talk with me about you and Sally's stuff, let me know. We'll have time for you. And
so good. Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
We're gonna wrap it up here. Can you give people some hope? Like, if they're struggling, if it's like, man, this COVID thing has still got months or who knows how long, and they're struggling. I mean, what kind of hope can you just encourage people a little bit around their marriage and their relationships?
Yeah. I think one of the things that early in COVID, like, last, I don't know when it was, April or May, I mentioned these earlier, but you can go to our website, doingfamilyright.com, and there's lots of helps on marriage there, everything under the sun there, podcasts and everything. But I want people to listen that we can see it as social isolation. And that's a damning concept, because it's like I'm cut off. I am alone, and I'm stuck with only you. And if you have in your mind the idea of social isolation, it's negative, derogatory.
Sure.
But social exclusiveness. When you went on your honeymoon, you were alone, and it was seen as ideal.
Yeah.
So if you say, well, yeah, it's not social isolation, it's social exclusiveness. It's me and you, babe.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sick of you. Okay, so we have to find some boundaries within the house. I'm going downstairs to watch some football. You can read your book, fine. But we also realize that if the mental picture is, this is an opportunity for us to spend more time together, get closer. Listen, when COVID first came, the first 12 weeks, I did jigsaw puzzles with my wife. Yeah. She's the jigsaw puzzle queen. I hate it because I'm kind of ADHD, and I don't want to throw pieces around the room.
Yeah.
But I settled down, and we did like 7 or 8 1,500-piece puzzles. And we started to laugh about it. And I started to get in there. I had my system. I was laying them this way. She says, oh, you're crazy. I said, I can't do it if there's no system, right? But we started to find our cadence of aloneness doesn't have to kill us. And if we think, oh, social exclusiveness, I have an article on that, as opposed to social isolation. Change your paradigm. It'll give you a more positive spin on it. And the other thing you've got to understand, if you want hope, is COVID is not in charge. Jesus is.
Yeah.
COVID is not in charge. Jesus is. Jesus didn't go for coffee and COVID happened. So he is Lord of 2020 and 2021, just like he was Lord of 2019.
Yeah.
The circumstances change, but Jesus doesn't. He is Lord of COVID. And I have to trust him to help me with my struggles and my frustrations and my impatience and the tensions between can't get together with the kids and can't see the grandkids and, all those things. Jesus, give me strength to walk through this season because it's no surprise to you.
Yeah. Amen. He is the hope we have, isn't he?
Amen. He is.
This is where we're going.
Amen.
Dr. Dave, such a pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you for taking the time. And I've just been encouraged. I mean, we're walking through COVID, my wife and I, but many out there too. And so thank you for taking the time. God bless you as you carry on in your ministry. And again, if people want to check that the website out, it's doingfamilyright.com.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. God bless you.